Welcome back. Told you we had some interesting grandchildren. The first one who's joining me in the studio, Mr. Azubike Alvan-Ikoku. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
The grandson of statesman, educationist, activist, and politician, Alvan-Ikoku. Welcome again. What does that feel like whenever people... It must be a bit daunting, isn't it?
Exactly. Sometimes overwhelming. But...
Well, I think you share the same experience with our guest who's joining us via Zoom from, I think he's joining us from Bauchi, Mr. Billy Tafawa-Balewa. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Billy Tafawa-Balewa is the grandson of our first and only Prime Minister, Mr. Sir Abubakar Tafawa-Balewa. Thank you so much for being with us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
I was just asking Mr. Alvan-Ikoku if it's daunting sometimes when people say, your grandfather was Tafawa-Balewa. What kind of pressure does that put on you as an individual?
Hello, good morning and Merry Christmas.
I was asking, what kind of pressure it puts on you as an individual, if you can hear me. What kind of pressure does it put on you as an individual when people remind you of who your grandfather was?
Wow, it's more of a burden because people expect too much from you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, and I can empathize.
Yeah. It's more of a burden, and well, fine. It's a two-way feeling. One, the responsibility is expected of you, and two, perhaps the happenings in the country. So the expectations are both ways, but it's more of a burden than really the good feeling that people think you have, because too much is expected from you, and you can imagine how things are in Nigeria today. But I mean, fine, at least there is that credibility, there is that uprightness, there is that feeling of satisfaction. But it's a two-way feeling. Yes.
I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Azubike Alvan-Ikoku. So that burden, were you close to your grandfather? Let's start from there. Did you sit at his feet, that sort of thing, and learn what kind of person he was and what his dream was for the country?
Interestingly, for one, I didn't have that privilege. My grandpa passed some 2 years before I was born.
Oh.
And but nevertheless, I was named after him, and the burden began to grow. In my early childhood, it didn't give me the room to be as mischievous as I would have loved to be as a child, So it puts, kind of that burden on me. But it's something I've grown with over the years. And remarkably, I had a father, a statesman too, a national figure, who himself had some work to do at home, and he did an excellent job at inculcating those wonderful values, the discipline that defined them at the time. And his voice always resonates that just be yourself, be who you are, strive to be disciplined, and just be the best you possibly can, He always knew that there would be that pressure, and that's the same experiment I've gone through over the years, So right about now, the burden is minimal. I don't have any urge for mischief, childhood mischief that I would have had back in the days. So it's somewhat exciting, and I basically would not want to let them down in any way.
I'm gonna get back to what he stood for and where because you are in government right now. You're the head of strategy and programs for NIMSI.
Yeah, that's where I find myself at the moment.
So let's talk a bit about his legacy, because our conversation today is about the Nigerian dream. And these were the men who put it together, so to speak, the idea of what it meant to be Nigerian and what we stood for as a people, and then the way governance was carried out back then. Could you, in a few words, in as few words as possible, articulate what that Nigerian dream was and juxtapose it with our situation right now?
Oh, well, my grandpa was more of an educationist, and that's what defined his person. You know, it was education, education all the way through. But nevertheless, in being an arrowhead, a flagship for education in Nigeria, he nevertheless rose to that leadership. You know, unlike his own son, his own first son, my dad, who was more of the nationalist, of the independence fighter, and deep down in the struggle and so on and so forth. So he was more of an educationist, but because he was also a leader, a natural leader, he took a shot at politics at different times, and you know that kind of defined his person, you know. But an astute statesman he was, I would say. Now, not so much because he's my grandpa, but if we began to delve into the field of education, you'd obviously find out that some of the principles he stood for and promoted, even as a member of the Nigerian Union of Teachers, was what later became the very basis of education in Nigeria. So that helped to stand him out. But his son, my dad, another interesting fellow. And I know at some point you may want to bring that up, but let me delve into a bit of history.
Okay.
They were on their path, you know, trying to define themselves. My own dad was took a shot at trade unionism, you know, partnered a great deal with Michael Imodu, of blessed memory now. And at some point, politics pitched them against one another. That's what people find very exciting. Politics pitched them against one another. And over a seat in the Eastern Nigeria House of Assembly. And it was always very, very disturbing to me as a child. So I had to accost my dad, you know, did this really happen?
Fighting Grandpa?
Why are you fighting Grandpa? Did this really happen? I said, sure. You know, and I'll tell you something, son. My mom supported me. I said, really? I said, yes, my mom supported me. And all of the electioneering campaign back at home was even more interesting. Some elderly people in the village who lived at the time told me all kinds of exciting things, you know. It seemed like they went to the extreme, but of course, all they wanted was the votes of the electorate, you know, and my dad seemed to get more of that. And so he won the election. And I was like, did that affect your relationship? He said, no way. Interestingly, he played host to his dad 11 days before his dad passed on, you know, so they were best of friends. And so that also should define politics these days. People shouldn't take it too far. They say it's a game of interest, but above and beyond that interest should be the interest, national interest, the interest of the nation, you know. So whoever is able to convince the electorate the more that he or she would uphold those interests, those national interests, not personal interests, the better. And so you said I should juxtapose it with today's politics. Well, politics is going as best as it seems like it can go, but it can obviously be better in today's Nigeria. It can be better. The sad thing is that it's become very mucky and very extreme. You know, we are perpetually living in very tense conditions. At the peak of electionary campaign, that is kind of needless. You know, we are one another's brothers, regardless of where we come from. You know, and I personally get disturbed and offended when people ask me, where are you from? Where else will I be from? I'm Nigerian, you know. I don't have to be from a certain ethnic nationality, you know. Some insist that that defines your person, but regardless of that, I think I am Nigerian, and I would like to remain such.
I want to be able to get Mr. Billy Tafawa-Balewa's views on, because your father was our first and only well, your grandfather, I beg your pardon, was our first and only prime minister. And I remember being a kid and watching your grandfather and his accent. My goodness, he didn't look like his voice at all. You know, so you would see this man with a turban, and then he would speak, and you'd be like, oh my goodness. And then, delving into who he was and the struggle for the independence that we have. Talk to us a bit about your views on your grandfather's legacy, and if that dream he had for Nigeria is playing itself out today.
Well, thank you for that. I was equally born some few years after he died, but I've heard and read so many things about him. And thank you about that. His pronation is excellent. I wish I can speak like him, but I mean, that's him. He was an English teacher. He was also an educationist, a disciplinarian, and a traditional man. Number one, he's traditional. He's always been traditional since then. So, I mean, their kind of Nigerian then was totally different. There were people who grew up together, most of them schooled together. And they were friends even before they went into politics. So they knew each other very well. And, being some of those who early education is then in the North, it was easier for them to group and then come together and start forming some group. One, the group they formed initially was the Arewa. It was purely a cultural political organization before it even became a party. So they have had their own piece of activism, even when they were tutors in school. So that shaped him. And then his traditional inclination also was so rooted into him, because he knows that everything is local. Politics and almost everything is local. So he was a traditional man, and all the things that had happened till the independence, he never ever thought, even in his memoirs and what have you, had any inclination of wanting to rule Nigeria. All he was doing was to be a good citizen of Nigeria and, help in the independence of Nigeria. But as fate will have it, he became the prime minister. And, history it is there, and history, he's done his best in trying to bring about unity in the country, particularly across all the divisions. Mind you, then was a parliamentary system where the regions were the almighty regions and powerful. It was only the police, the internal affairs, and perhaps the foreign affairs that was more or less of the federal domain. But still, he brought in almost everybody on board, carried everyone along. And he did what he could. Well, Nigeria today seems to be a little quite different. People wonder. I wonder when we were in regions, Nigeria was even much easier to manage and govern than now that we are all one unitary system where states pervade. But yet, the diversity in us is almost tearing us apart, which ought to have bring us together.
Mm.
So I think, yes.
I mean, I want to be able. You are a public affairs analyst. At least that's what you do right now. So let's analyze our public just for a little bit. A lot of things have happened in the past few weeks. We had the media chat of the president. We've seen the security situation in parts of the country. The removal of the ban on mining in Zamfara. We saw the stampede in places just before Christmas. So let's get your views on a few of these issues and your thoughts on how governance was done in 2024. We saw the president scoring himself excellent. Should he have done that? Where do you stand when you look at our public and you analyze everything that's going on?
Well, let me start with security. to some extent, I would love to give them some kudos. Yeah, getting down, and the military are up on it. We are beginning to see some signs that normalcy is returning even in those black areas, which is a good sign. Of course, Boko Haram has been degraded for some time now, and even the Niger Delta and the IPOP thing really being nipped to the bud. Well, as for the budget, it's beginning to unravel now. We are seeing the details. It's just becoming public. We are seeing some details, and I would love to see the robust National Assembly this time around. Unfortunately, the 2023 budget was all executed to about only 30%, which is very poor. 2023 budget. 2023, 2024 budget. 2025 budget, we want to see some little move to say 60, 70, they can go 95. And they all have to come together. I don't know why the president is scoring himself high. It could be on security. If that is it, fine. But on the budget performance, very poor, 30%. And well, you talked about the mining in Tafawa. Well, like I said, the security situation is improving. But mind you, a lot of people believe that most of the root causes of this banditry and kidnapping are associated with that mining businesses that's going on around those places. Sadly, it could be true. You know, I hope the government had really thought about that before. They should have nipped that on the bud, make sure that all these mining issues going on, they are under the purview or under the full grasp of the government. Otherwise, foreigners will come and keep bringing in arms and chasing people out. Because to some extent, it's just about chasing people from their land so that you can mine. Those things must be looked at seriously. The stampede, you can see, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. A blessed country like Nigeria and people are running for food, you can't have food to eat. It's so sad. Leaders must sit up. It's not about giving rights, no, not at all. Finding ways to make people be useful, employ government, open businesses, and what have you. Let people earn. That's the way. Of course, palliatives can come in here and there. People need palliatives anywhere in the world. There are food banks, food whatever you call them in other lands in the world. But in Nigeria, it's not just only the hunger, but there's poverty as well. And leaders must sit up, particularly this government, must sit up to see how they can cushion this poverty. There's so much poverty in the land. We haven't seen more of this campaign. Of course, they are happening in so many places quietly, but because the media haven't carried it. But you see people during festivities, you see people lining in politicians' houses to collect 5 kg, 10 kg of rice. It's not good. Nigeria, the common border, or Cameroon, you don't see things like that. They're what's up with us? We're a rich country, for God's sake. Things need to be done better. And I will expect better from them. Yes.
I want to come back to you before I move to Lagos. Azubike Alvan-Ikoku, let's take a look. He touched on a few things, but I want to get your thoughts on governance. At least with the Tinubu administration coming in, I know that you work in NIMC. I know that you are part of government. But, you know, are we in the right direction? Are we moving in the right direction? And is this the kind of government that will take us to where we want to? And maybe borrow a few thoughts from your father and your grandfather. If they were looking at us right now, would they be saying, okay, yes, this is the way to go?
Okay, I'll put it this way. My perspective, governance and, okay, let me put it this way. Nigeria, over the years, has become increasingly complex. The complexities, yes, may be man-made, may be deliberate, may be to gain political advantage, but I do not think, and I include every single leader in this country since independence, I do not think any single president or head of government in this country did not or does not mean well. I personally do not think. And I don't think they dabbled into governance just for the fun of it. But perhaps some have been more overwhelmed with the complexities that they've met than others. And so governance for me requires a very intricate response, okay? Are we getting that intricate response today? The answer may be yes, but we need to step up our game, okay? If we don't, history would also not judge the present administration well. I think the present administration means well. I think the present administration also should be given the required support that it requires to succeed, okay? But they must bring solutions to the table that matches the complexity of the day. So whether the complexity pops up in security challenge, the complexity pops up in economic management, the complexity pops up in food security, that the appropriate response must be in place. And once that is in place, I think the government will be remembered for good. Thank you.
Ayo.
Thank you, Kayla. I'd like to start on a rather comical note. The two gentlemen tend to be lookalikes of their grandfathers. Mr. Alvan-Ikoku, for instance, I'm looking at you on the screen talking to Kayla, and I'm looking at the 10 naira note, and I'm seeing your grandfather in a way. I don't know if that's something that you have thought about. Same for you, Mr. Tafawa-Balewa. I'm seeing your face, and I'm seeing the face on our 5 naira note, and I'm wondering, I don't know, how does that feel? Let me start with you, Mr. Tafawa-Balewa.
Yeah, I only heard the last part of your question.
I said, how does it feel to be your grandfather's look-alike? Because I'm looking at the 5 naira note now, and I'm seeing his face and yours.
Thank you. Well, I don't know. It's just, like I said earlier in the beginning, the two-way feeling.
Yeah.
One, yes, there was a good man who had lived and done his best for the country he's done. Here is me, who is seeing a different Nigeria from my own perspective. And then
yeah.
people.
One of the things that strikes me is, and it is something that you have said earlier, I hope you can hear me well. One of the things that strikes me is the age at which they all started to get involved in national development. They were very, very young men at the time. Compare that to what we have today. Do you think we are in any way preparing the young to be like the people who brought Nigeria to where they got?
That's the missing link. These people, Tafawa-Balewa died at, I think, 54. Amadou Bello at 56. Well, a couple of them died much earlier. But they were there. They were part of the system, and they had given in their best because energy was there, the right frame of mind was there, the anger was there, and then. But now and today, it's so different. Much younger people only come into power when the system wants to use them. In most cases, in some cases, yeah, some come early, but at the end of the day, they get done. I knew people who became governor in 1999, like Amadou Moazu at 44, Donald Duke much younger than that, and the rest of them. But it's no longer like that. I think it is because of the perpetuation of the aristocratic side of us in Nigeria. That's why you become a member of the State House or National Assembly, minister, governor, senator, and eventually, if you know your way, you become president. So you can see you've been dominating almost all the cycles and systems before you get to the top. So there's really no chance or opportunity for much younger ones to come along and showcase themselves. And I bet you, check every Nigerian leader that had done well in this country, you must see that age is also on his side because he's up and doing. You don't take nonsense.
Absolutely.
But if you are a bit much, you tend to rely on people to do so many things for you. And unfortunately, in Nigeria, there are too many sharp people who take advantage of situations and authorities given to them and eventually do wrong things. Like,
let me rephrase. Just a second. I'd like to take your friend, if you don't mind. Let me rephrase that question to Mr. Alvan-Ikoku, sitting right there with Kayla, my colleague, in our Abuja studio. What do you think should be the entry point or path for young people in governance? Well, Kayla already let it out that you are serving in government at one level right now. If you could, what would you recommend, or how, as the entry point for young people to get into government? Because ultimately they're going to get there, and if they don't start to intern to learn now how to do things, how to run government at whatever level, it might be a little difficult going forward. So, what would be your recommendation of an entry point for young people, for the young people, and for the people who will let them in?
Thank you very much, Ayo, for that question. I deem it a very excellent one. But you're not going to catch me on that. I'm not going to give any recommendation as in the minimum benchmark by way of age in entering politics. Rather, I will give the nation a charge, to conscientize the young people, okay? If you look at our schools and the curriculum, especially history, civics, and all of that, how well is it being taught? How seriously is that being taken? I think those are the avenues that would lead to a proper preparation and conscientization of the young people. Maturity, everyone would not get mature at the same time. It would vary from person to person. And I need to change and put something on the table again to change an impression that we have, a notion that we have in this country that I don't think is right, okay? Yes, the highest office of the land may be that of the President, Commander-in-Chief. Everyone cannot be President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It will only be one person at every given point in time. It's good for people to have aspirations. It's good for every Nigerian to have aspirations if they so wish, but wherever you find yourself, whether it's in the public service like I am now, or in the legislative arm, whether it's the state or local government or the federal legislature, for goodness sake, I think you should give it your best shot, based on your level or depth of preparation, So I would not certainly be on air or even in private and begin to dwell in extreme remarks about the government of the day because it is personalized to perhaps the personal personality of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. No, I'm not going to do that because I'm also in government. So how well have I led my little department in the National Identity Management Commission? That matters a great deal, okay? And it's only when I have proved my mettle at that level, no matter how little, that, of course, even without marketing myself consciously, that people say, oh, he did well when he had this level of responsibility. Perhaps we should try him for the next, okay? And it goes on and on. So our forebears, of course, proved their mettle at a very early stage. And as such, when the opportunity came, they were able to move on to the next level.
It's
and
that proof,
how well they did,
it's that
of course,
proof.
because,
My apologies, Mr. Alvan-Ikoku. Is that proof that I'm looking at giving the opportunities for young people about? Because if they don't have the opportunity to prove themselves, then they're never going to be able to do it. So that's the entry level, that's the entry point that I'm talking about. Because if they don't, there are many of them, countless. I mean, you look at our movie industry, you look at our video, music industry, you look at the entertainment industry in general, you see that they are proving themselves. But that is not governance. So that's the question that I'm asking. How do we give them that opening to be able to at least prove what they can do?
The country should be about creating the enabling environment. Do we have an enabling environment in every single sector, in every facet of the economy? If the answer is no, then our work is well cut out. And we should, of course, go to work in trying to ensure that that enabling environment is there. If we are still stuck in perhaps hunger, if we are still stuck in criminality, then we need to rethink, okay? And just go about creating that enabling environment. I think if that enabling environment were in place, many young people would thrive, okay? Many young people would thrive. And it would only mean that when the future eventually comes, that it would be tough to choose amongst, you know, either young people or people who've come of age who have presented themselves either for governance, you know, because they would have a very rich repository, a very rich background that they've had to actually prove themselves. They could prove themselves in business world, they could prove themselves in agriculture, you just name it, okay? So it mustn't be about it mustn't be about jumping into the fray and you just want to be a local government chairman or a governor. What credentials do you bring to the table? What have you done before now? Okay, that matters a great deal.
Absolutely. So let me take this to Mr. Tafawa-Balewa, who joined us virtually. Is there a way to prepare? I mean, maybe you want to speak about your own experience. Well, Mr. Alvan-Ikoku is in government, and you are a public affairs, you know, discussant. Is there a way to prepare young people? Is there a way you were prepared, for instance? I mean, your father led the country. Is there a way you were prepared for what you are doing now, for governance at any level? Did you get any opportunity to be opened up to knowing some of the things that you know now about Nigeria that could give you an opportunity to lead?
Sorry, your audio, there's a problem with your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think I know.
Okay. I'm asking if you think if there was ever an opportunity for you to learn, to be mentored at home, or got an opportunity as a grandchild of a nationalist to lead the country. Was there an opportunity like that for you? Was there a preparation for you to be in government?
Somehow, I still didn't hear you very well, but you seem to ask me if I had or have.
I'm struggling to hear you, Mr. Tafawa-Balewa. If you can, okay. Okay, can you hear me well now? Okay, I'm not sure that the connection is quite good. Maybe we'll want to work on that very quickly. But Mr. Alvan-Ikoku, if you can take on that same question, was there a mentoring system for you when you were younger that, okay, you're going to be, because your father led the country at one level or the other, there is a mentoring program for you as a grandchild?
Yes, my dad did expose me as much as possible. He wasn't restrictive in any way in what I read. He encouraged me to be versatile, to read as much books as I really desired to. And he was himself a good collector of books, you know, ranging from very communist and socialist books and all of that. There were so much in his study, you know, and they look quite fancy at the time, and I took a lot of interest in dissecting some of those volumes, you know. But that was me. I also had siblings who showed other interest and encouraged them along the path of the interest that they had shown. So yes, there can be a conscious mentoring process by parents. There can be a conscious mentoring process by teachers, you know, from the very basic education level, elementary schools. There can be that molding process, okay? And we shouldn't be wary of that in any way. So yes is a capital yes will be an answer.
I mean, I wish you went into politics. Same thing with Mr. Billy Tafawa-Balewa. I wish you went into politics.
But why would you wish such a thing?
I don't know, because of the kind of people your forebears were, you know. It'll be, I understand, you don't have to, you can make impact in your little, in whatever ways. It would have been something, though, to see. And I noticed that a lot with people who are descendants of these great men, you know, not wanting to go into politics, to carrying that burden. And of course, I'm sure a lot of people do that when they look at you and Mr. Billy as well. Looking at you, why don't you go into politics? Your father was an education, or especially Mr. Billy. I'm sure that your father was prime minister of this country. Why are you not into politics? I'll give you a chance each to answer that. But add to that this particular question, which has to do with the legacy and Nigeria's preservation of the legacy of your grandfather and Billy's grandfather as well. I mean, at least I watched Shashore's documentary, Journey of an African Colony, and I remember how he at least in his own way, was able to preserve that legacy. Would you say Nigeria has done enough to preserve the legacy of your grandfather? I'll start with you, Mr. Alvan-Ikoku.
Well, I'm one who believes that we can always do more, okay? Lest we begin to celebrate ourselves and think we've done all we possibly can do, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for more. And there are many more nationalists and statesmen who also deserve a preservation of their legacies. Some sing unsung, okay? They were probably didn't bubble up to the limelight and all of that. They should be fished out and immortalized as much as possible. So is Nigeria doing enough? Maybe not, okay, in immortalizing and preserving legacies and all of that. We can certainly do more. And not so much about or for my grandpa, but for many more Nigerians there who may not have gotten the opportunity for their legacies to also be immortalized or celebrated.
Mr. Tafawa-Balewa, same question.
Yeah, well, back to Chris. I didn't get you the other question to ask me from Lagos. I'm already in politics, you know, but not the politics of political office, like you just said. It's so unfortunate about Nigeria's unity. It's so unfortunate that now activism and opposition is becoming so stifled and strangled. It's part of politics. Activism, if we miss activism, we'll never get it there. If we miss opposition, or we stifle opposition, or kill opposition, it's still not going to be well with us. So in my own little way, I've been into politics. I'm still into politics. I do a lot of things and support people who we share the same values and what have you. Now back to the same issue. Yes, I think Nigeria is a work in progress, and I believe one day we'll get there. But we have to. Leaders now, if they want that to happen, they need to bring in together all the people. Nigeria is more divided than it was in the 60s, which is so unfortunate. I can't imagine. You know, even though, yes, we have a lot of fault lines, there's so much diversity in culture, in religion, even in economics. There's so much diversity in Nigeria, but we need a leader who will now use that diversity and make Nigeria great, the great that we anticipate it to be from the 60s to date. It can be done.
I want you to answer that question. I need to hear your answer. I heard Alvan-Ikoku's answer. I want yours. Do you think your grandfather's legacy was properly celebrated and preserved by Nigerians, by successive governments after he passed?
Well, more needs to be done, but I think it's, like I said, it's a work in progress. All Nigerian leaders, I've never seen a bad one amongst them. They all came with the right intention. But unfortunately, the followership are the ones that are too many smart people who make mess of leaders who come with good intentions and bad attitude. But I think more can be done. And if you don't support the legacies of leaders past, yours can never be supported as well. So leaders should see to it that they make sure that, and like I said, all the leaders from them Tafawa-Balewa to today, they all came with good intentions. They only need to be
I'm afraid that's where we have to wrap it up this morning. I want to have a longer conversation, but I don't have the time. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Billy Tafawa-Balewa, Public Affairs Analyst and grandchild of Sir Abubakar Tafawa-Balewa, Nigeria's first and only Prime Minister. Thank you for joining us on the program, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy Christmas and Merry New Year. Thank you.
And of course, Mr. Azubike Alvan-Ikoku, Head of Strategy and Program for NIMSI and grandchild of the great Alvan-Ikoku. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you, Ayo, for having me on Sunrise Daily. I appreciate it. Thank you.